trying to tell my friends on the left, whether I say it or the American people say it, which they do, 98% of them basically say it, we're not saying we hate trans people. What we're saying is, I don't know why I'm paying for their surgery.
How much money do you think is being spent on this, Cenk? Because for you to sit there and be like, I gotta tell my friends on the left, look, I am not a transphobe. I just don't want my money going towards gender affirming care for prisoners, okay? That has nothing to do with that. Then why are you buying into this rhetoric that clearly is being propagated by the right in order to get people really mad, once again, using trans people as the crux for the whole thing?
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. President Trump continued his attack on the transgender community in his address Tuesday night, attacking transgender athletes, highlighting his ongoing efforts to curb the rights of transgender people, then called on Congress to ban gender-affirming care for youth.
I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology. I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanent.
Disgusting. Brian Talmy, thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Hey, 5 of you. The Serf Times just got a sub from Brian Talmy. Also, huge news. Serf Times is about to hit 100,000, massive milestone, subscribers, which is huge. It means that we'll be more insulated and allowed to be even more radical on the streams. So I'm excited. Tell your friends, if they haven't already, subscribe to the Serf Times. You know, it's a good thing.
Banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie.
For more on President Trump's attacks on the trans community, we're joined now by Amara Jones, the founder and CEO of Translash Media, host of its investigative podcast, The Anti-Trans Hate Machine. Your response to last night's address, Amara?
I mean, I think that what trans people are feeling after last night's address and overall is that essentially the Trump administration has declared war on trans people and declared war on trans existence. And the fact that there was so much time and energy devoted to it last night, I think underscores the way that this community is targeting trans people as a part of its broader bid to undermine democracy and to usher in authoritarianism.
And
Amara, I wanted to ask you about the Republican campaign's anti-trans ad blitz. Earlier this month, CBS News reported that Trump's campaign spent more than $19 million on 2 television ads that have aired nearly 55,000 times since October 1. And they focus explicitly on transgender rights.
Yes, essentially, you know, the Trump campaign spent in total $215 million on those ads, and it was the single largest ad buy of the Trump campaign. So from the perspective of the Trump campaign, it was an anti-trans campaign, and we know that it works. I mean, they credit those ads with giving them the margin of victory to amongst young men between the ages of 18 and 35 who are oftentimes unreliable voters, which is one of the reasons why they weren't in the models that we were seeing in terms of projecting the final numbers. Well, the Trump campaign was seeing movement amongst that group, and they showed up. They showed up in part because of this targeted anti-trans campaign.
Well, Amara Jones, we want to thank you for being with us as we quickly...
That's so sad on a number of levels. I mean, first and foremost, for someone like Donald Trump to be running those many ads and that much, like, you know, anger directed towards a marginalized group, we're talking, you know, between 1% to 2% of the U.S. population. So we're talking about a very heavily marginalized and heavily attacked group within the U.S. to then use and try and manipulate men's insecurities and men's fears and to try and galvanize voters around the idea that you have to be able to somehow assert strength or like... It's so profoundly sad on so many levels the very idea of masculinity and the really the concept of what is a man, which seems to be a hyper focus of the right for a long time now. Their idea of taking back masculinity, and that we need to take back traditional masculinity, and we need to have men's men and women's women and all that kind of shit. When it's like it's just so profoundly sad that yes, that we live in a crisis right now where men are suffering, where men are statistically living longer with their parents. Men are statistically getting less and less into higher education and university. Men are statistically dropping out of university at much higher rates, and as a result of that, they are going to be getting much less high-paying jobs within the workforce. It turns out that women are not interested in men who are still living with their parents and do not have high job prospects, leading to a large percentage of men who now feel outcast by society. Everything I just listed is directly as a result of a lot of the failures of capitalism and a lot of the failures of patriarchy, reinforcing the idea that to be a man, your validity as a man comes from your ability to make it as a man, to be able to be successful as a man, to be financially successful. And then in addition to that, you have to be a provider and a protector of your family, which means that you need to be a masculine man, a strong man, and all that kind of shit. Well, what's the most fearsome thing that you can strike into the hearts of insecure men? That you might be a woman. Because that's the opposite. That's the other thing. It's like, yeah, what are you, some kind of pussy boy? Huh? Are you kind of like a little bit of a girl? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, ooh, that ignites all the deep insecurities that I've been raised with my entire life. And now, holy shit, the fuck you talking about, bro? I'm twice as fucking man. Now I'm really man. I'm going to be fucking violent. I'm going to actually fucking fight you because I'm really fucking angry. When you're insecure, it's making you insecure. It's making you so insecure that you have to do violence, that you have to try and smash the thing that's making you feel bad, and you don't even have the tool set to be able to explain or understand that into your head, and then to prey on that. For Donald Trump to take that exact paradigm and dynamic and to be like, yeah, and I'm going to try and manipulate that insecurity, and then rather than help men, rather than try and be like, hey, by the way, there's a lot of problems with the way that we are trying to implement these ideas, that under a capitalist system that's failing, your worth, your self-worth, your identity as a gender is going to be coming from the very idea that you have to be a provider, that you have to be someone who in society is capable of protecting and providing and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be reinforced in both genders, by the way. I mean, patriarchy is upheld by a lot of women as well who reinforce these kind of things. When you hear conservative women, for example, talking about how I want a manly man. I want a guy who's making lots of money, and then I can just stay at home, and then I can bake, and then I can actually take care of the children while he is strong, strapping, opens doors for me. And I want a Prince Charming kind of a dude, you know, and that's what I'm looking for. And so guys need to be like that. I don't want a guy who fucking has emotions. I don't want a guy who fucking cries. I don't want any of this kind of shit. I don't want an F slur. He sounds like an F slur. Are you describing an F slur to me? Yeah, no, I don't want that. No. I want a man's man. We need manly men, more manly men. This is becoming harder and harder to achieve. As it's becoming harder and harder to achieve, it's the reason why statistically you're seeing now such dramatically high rates of suicide amongst men. Nearly 4 times as many men than women are killing themselves successfully as well, because a large percentage of men who try to attempt suicide actually succeed in doing that. A lot of this all plays into the same exact problem that is being exploited by the very people who are trying to concentrate wealth into their pockets and become more rich at the hands and suffering of other people. That's this entire game from the ground on up. It can take the form of the vilification of trans people, as Donald Trump is doing, but this is the same playbook that has been done time and time again. They're actually recycling a lot of the talking points that they're doing now towards the trans community that they were doing in the 80s towards the gay community. It was the exact same thing, and they played into the same insecurities. You don't want to be a pussy boy. You don't want to be an F-slur, do you? Are you gay? Because that's the other bad thing. It's one thing for you to be feminine. It's one thing for me to think that you're a woman. It's another thing for me to think that you would actually hook up with another man. Disgusting, deplorable, sodomy, sinful, all that shit. And then the insecurities that play into that as well. Like, you can just see how much unpacking has to happen for dudes, especially in this arena, when all of a sudden you'll get those kind of dynamics for, like, a straight guy will tell you something like, oh yeah, no, like, I can't have a gay friend because they just want to fuck me the whole time. And then if the gay guy says, no, I don't, I'm not attracted to you, the whole thing flips all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden the straight dude's like, well, why not? What's wrong with me? Why aren't you attracted to me? And then it's like, wait, sorry, I'm confused. You said that like you didn't care, and then this meant nothing to you, and that you have no interest because you're not gay. So, and you're very, very insecure, clearly, and you're worried about gay guys potentially just always hitting on you. Like, just apparently when you go into a straight club, if you go into a gay club and you're a homophobe, it's just like you're a magnet to all the gays. They just love homophobic, fucking insecure assholes. That's what gay guys really go for. And dudes just have such a complex about that. But you can tell how many layers upon layers are just fucking built behind each other, and all the insecurities that are just wrapped in this goddamn onion. And the Republicans are like, you know what, we're going to take all that and we're going to exploit it to win more political power, to concentrate more wealth, and exacerbate all of this. By the way, it's what's known as false consciousness. It's the very idea of distracting the general public with like the problems that don't actually directly concern them. How often in your day-to-day, when you go into your 9 to 5, does a trans kid actually affect your life? Genuinely. If you can ask the average conservative or Republican that, if they even know a trans person, but they are so mad about this shit. They think about this shit all the time. It's always in their fucking brains. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, did a trans kid tell you to come into your job early today? Did a trans kid tell you that you're not going to get overtime pay? Did a trans kid promote someone else in lieu of you because you might not be a man or white or something of that effect? You know, what the company was really looking to promote up to upper management? Was it a trans kid that did that? Did a trans kid fire you? Is a trans kid the reason that you are unable to find another job because the job market is complete and utter shit? Was that a trans kid's fault? Did any of that relate to it? No, because that seems to be what causes you a little bit of strife in your day-to-day life. And so that's maybe why it's of a lot of benefit to the people who want to keep doing that shit, to keep getting you scared about trans kids, to keep making you think about that shit. When at the end of the day, it's like, does this actually affect your work? Does this actually hurt you? This is going to lead me right into the whole Cenk stuff, by the way, because Cenk and Anna are now apparently going down the we got to talk about trans athletes rabbit hole. Leonard McDonald, thank you. Lance, you forgot delicious. Well, I appreciate what that is in reference to. I can't remember when I was talking about that. All right, let's quickly talk about it. So we need a little background. You need to know a little bit about the person on the left here. This woman apparently was from a TV show called The Biggest Loser. The show, I believe, the title speaks for itself. It's a competition where you lose weight. The one who loses the most. Do they win? I haven't actually watched the series. The concept or premise doesn't really appeal to me. But either way, she was one of the contestants on it, and then she went on to become a podcaster. Anna Kasparian actually has already been on her podcast, where they had one of those entire "Why I Left the Left" things, like, oh yeah, I feel politically homeless, and then she was like, I used to be like an Obama-style liberal because I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community, and then I thought like the Democrats had my back, but then it turns out the Democrats don't really have your back, and they want to push the trans agenda on you. And she's like, oh my God, don't get me started. And then they were like turfy turf turf, and turf to turf turf, and then turf to turf 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 turf, and then that went down for a while. As is my understanding. I didn't finish the entire thing. One topic at a time. Hi, friend. Other really great channel that you should check out for content related to this. But anyways, she was on a panel with Sam Cedar. And on that panel, they were talking about USAID. Sam Cedar, if you haven't watched it, did an absolutely phenomenal job, basically just, fact shaming Benny Johnson. But at one point, he was talking about the fact that you can make an argument when it comes to USAID, how it's utilized and how it's utilized in some forms in order to enact soft power by the United States. A lot of other nations do this, all right? Whether it is, donating vast amounts of medical equipment, exporting a lot of doctors and trying to go help countries that need it. This can be done to enact and make a country dependent on the United States in one way or another so that you can enact some form of, geopolitical control over another region, whatever you want to have it. There are definitely instances where USAID is used for that. There are definitely instances in which USAID is used to spread propaganda, U.S. imperial propaganda in other countries. That is true. But in addition to that, USAID is also used for life-saving programs in very, very poor regions of the world where they will do things like provide medical attention, HIV protection, clean needles, and food programs. In some cases, it is food and feeding programs where the food has to be pre-digested because the children are suffering from malnutrition, and it can actually be deadly for them to just eat food right away. And so this is an actual system where if you are going to suddenly make these countries less reliant on the USAID, I think you have a moral responsibility to not let the kids die in the process. You don't just cut it off and be like, which is what the Trump administration is effectively doing. Sam Cedar was explaining all this. And in the middle of it, she suddenly is like, well, I think the dying kids is a red herring. And it's like, a red herring for what? Well, the fact that US aid is actually used for a lot of things that we didn't want to be spending money on. And again, like, the whole thing is absurd to me to think that Doge is exposing anything. Sam did a great job of actually explaining to everybody, Doge is like not exposing anything. US aid and how the expenditures are spent is publicly available information that anybody could have looked up, but no one just, I guess, cared up until this point. But now that Doge is effectively saying we were giving $46 million apparently to Brazil. Of that money, apparently $117,000 was used for an LGBTQ plus drag show. Is that really promoting America's interests? So we're not going to do that anymore. And like, again, if you cared about wasteful government spending, then you would slash the military budget. You would actually conclusively determine that since there has been 7 years in a row of audits of the Pentagon that have shown unexplainable losses of trillions of dollars, money, government money, wasteful spending, just gone, evaporated, burnt, trillions of dollars, that's a lot more money than a couple $100,000 that was given to another country to promote a whole bunch of different programs. One of those turned out to be a drag show, right? It's like, if we break down all of this money, it's like you don't actually get to like control 100% of how every dollar is spent. And so if a country takes $100,000 from you to promote a whole bunch of different things, one of those happens to be a drag show, well, then yeah, you could say that that's not where you want that money to go. But you can't say overall that this is even like comparable in wasteful spending to other things that are just literally burning cash.
To that woman from the biggest...
I don't know why my YouTube keeps resetting. That's weird.
To that woman from The Biggest Loser, who I was on Piers Morgan with the other day, who said this feeding the starving kids is, and I quote, a red herring. Go F yourself. Go take your maha and shove it up your ass. You worried about people's health with the processed food? And you say that starving kids are a red herring? Go F yourself. I doubt she'll hear this or see this, but I felt like I had to say that.
We should clip it.
We should clip it. Let's clip it, and we'll play it at the end of the... we'll play it in the fun half.
Just tag her.
Well, there you go. I wanted that just to be an intro because that's going to lead us into another interaction online between one Matt. Nasty, nasty work to pander to these soulless ghouls. Here's her on Piers Morgan mocking concern for starving children while pretending to care about starving children.
The feeding starving children thing is such a freaking red herring.
So said confidently, with anger, and condescendingly as well. The feeding starving children thing is such a freaking red herring. And it's like, wait, the act of doing it or the act of talking about it, because Trump cut off everything. He cut off all US aid, all of it. And so if he does that, the list of things that he is going to be cutting money to include money that is used to feed starving children. If you're okay with that, if you are like, hey, by the way, sacrifices need to be made, then fucking admit it. Like, stop doing this thing where it's like, they're trying to distract us because I want to talk about how there was trans and gender dysphoric mice that were getting operations and drag shows in Brazil, and I want to talk about the Argentinian gays, and it's like, but you understand that even if you were able to prove, which none of you have done conclusively, but if you were able to prove that, say, $46,000 was done to promote homosexuality in Uganda, for example, which it wasn't, but if you were able to prove that, then is that comparable to, say, $40 million being spent on a necessary life-saving feeding program for children in different countries in Africa? Is that the same thing? And are you willing to sacrifice those kids? Because this was a blanket shutoff. This was just like everything canceled. And so you might not enjoy some of the programs. I even don't enjoy some of the programs that USAID does. I, for example, really despise the fact that millions of dollars are spent on US propaganda programs within a variety of capacities in other nations and countries, and I don't think that they should be spending millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to spread propaganda in other nations in order to further American imperialism. I would like to see that cut. But I'll be honest with you, if you told me in the temporary right now that say 100,000 kids in Djibouti have to die, they just starve to death, for you to get less propaganda, anti-Chinese propaganda suddenly played in different regions of Eastern Europe, I would be like, no. This is not how you should go about that. That is horrifying. You're talking about a mass death event because you don't like one aspect of the system. It's like, that is absolutely absurd. It's irresponsible. It's honestly, it's inhumane. It's going to result in mass death of kids. So no, I don't think it's fair to suddenly just be like, well, I mean, the dying kids is a red herring.
But first of all, the vast
Thank you, Drew.
majority of this
Welcome.
USAID bloat and corruption does not go to that. Second of all, we have children starving here in America. But third of all, and what you don't know, and so you're like, oh, there's children starving in Africa. When really, it is about billions of dollars going to big ag. That's what that's really about. And I've seen it firsthand when I went to South Sudan and stayed at a refugee camp. So don't play your star.
I forgot how bad that was. Maybe I was just laughing too much at her at the time, but I didn't know you did the entire, like, okay, you don't know starving kids. I went on a tour, okay? I've seen them starve, and so I know what it's like. So do we agree that those programs are essential to keep children alive? Apparently they're going to be helping, what, 6,000 children in South Africa alone? That's probably a worthy program that should be getting, value for your dollar. Do you agree with that? Yeah, but why won't you talk about the fucking trans mice, huh? Money's going towards that. You're telling me about the red herring of starving kids. So when Matt put this out, that led to Anna Kasparian jumping in. Hey, Matt, maybe spend a little less time policing who I can converse with. It's fucking weird. Are you ever going to address any of the issues that people actually bring up? Are you ever going to, or even acknowledge them? Are you going to talk about them? Are you gonna, it's always just like, hey, why don't I actually try and distract all of you with a thing that's not actually happening? Yeah, this is once again Matt trying to control my ability to speak to other people. It's kind of gross that he would try and police a woman and her ability to have conversations with other people who disagree with him. No one is saying who you can or cannot talk to. People are criticizing who you're choosing to talk to and who you're choosing to hang out with and who you're choosing to promote. And like, again, if you are like, Cenk is going to go have a beer with Charlie Kirk, if you have more in common with that white supremacist piece of shit than you do with Sam Cedar, because Sam Cedar is actually like, oh, by the way, Charlie Kirk is a bad person. You probably shouldn't promote him and his ideals. I think you've all lost the plot. But that leads us to two things. We're going to talk about Cenk Mania going on the show. It's the newest episode of Jillian. But also, I found a clip about starving kids. That is actually quite interesting.
The documentary sent me spinning. I don't think I slept for 5 nights. So for the audience who has not yet seen the documentary, it's called The Grab. What's being grabbed?
Well, it's basically looking how, powerful forces around the world are very focused on food and water, sort of for survival of their governments or for corporate profits in the 21st century, and what the impact of that is, both like right now, like what's happening right now, and what people are saying is likely to play out in the future. The documentary opens up by saying, we might, the way that we're heading is not having enough food and water in huge regions of the world that are going to lead to destabilization of countries, right? And then you end up with mass migration. And then you have mass migration of people into places that might themselves be fragile or holding on. And then those places become destabilized. And then you have another place where people are migrating from, right? And you see the rise of political rhetoric in countries because of migration issues now. And there's a report I have, a cable or a report from the State Department that says the number one reason that people were leaving Guatemala wasn't because of gangs or kidnappings. It was because people were hungry. People are hungry. What do you do? What do you do if you are watching your kids not eat well? You know, in Guatemala, I think 50% of children are stunted because of malnutrition. What do you do as a parent? You know?
I would do anything.
Yes, right?
I would do anything.
I went to Venezuela in 2017 because they were running out of food. And so people were literally starving, you know, people that had 9-to-5 jobs. And I went down there and people were using WhatsApp and Twitter to try to find, and keep in mind that Venezuela was once one of the 20th wealthiest countries in the world. At that point, people were using WhatsApp and Twitter just to try to find food in grocery stores, but they couldn't find any. And so I was talking to doctors, I was talking to mechanics across the board. Unfortunately, I filmed a family whose parents had 9-to-5 jobs digging through a dumpster with their kids because they couldn't find. And that was 2017. What's happened since 2017? Millions of Venezuelans have left Venezuela, right? People can hate whoever the leader is. They don't usually pick up all of their lives and put their children on their back and then go try to climb across the Darien Gap or leave everything behind just because they don't like their political leader or because things have gotten a little bit more difficult.
Right.
People take those huge measures when they're watching their kids go hungry or they themselves are going hungry.
So when I first started watching it, I thought, well, okay, you know, some countries have these resources, other countries have those resources. So of course you would grow food elsewhere, have it shipped in. So it seemed very normal, made perfect sense in the first 5 minutes. Thank you so much for watching.
So it would seem that, you know, depending on who the messenger is, she actually does care about starving children. And in her own words, she would do anything to prevent that. I guess just not with Sam Cedar. If he actually brings it up and relates it to USA, then it's just a frickin' red herring. The left eats its own. This is a Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail.
How long will it take for all of Trump's biggest supporters to publicly do the Nazi salute? We have 2 caught on camera in public appearances. All right, hang on. In public speeches. Can you imagine how often they're doing them behind the scenes? Is it just at the beginning of every meeting, before formal introductions, at the coffee break, late at night when they dress up and play out their deepest fantasies? What would our grandfathers, the greatest generation who did everything they could to kill as many Nazis as possible, have to say about this? At first, I thought this was a parody. I thought he was like, come on, guys, this is silly. Stop.
Mm-hmm.
And you could talk to any person I know on the left, and they are kind of quietly believing that we've hit Armageddon.
Yeah.
And what's really upsetting about it, though, is in this election, I did vote for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because what I want to talk to you about, some of the things on the left, I found more scary.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh my God. So holding up a statement that, you know, shows both Elon Musk and Steve Bannon trying to normalize the Nazi fascist salute, talking about how, you know, an upcoming election was coming. And honestly, what was being proposed on the left was even more horrifying than what was being proposed by Donald Trump. This whole, I don't know, premise would have worked a lot better like 22 days ago, but before you actually saw all the policies that Trump get enacted in real time and how rapidly he's been doing them. Then maybe you could have been like, but honestly, is it going to be that bad? You know? And now that we're basically a month in, you can be like, yes, the answer is yes. He absolutely is that bad.
Ed, is this as deranged as I think it is? Or are you like, yeah, they're all...
Yeah. So there's so many things that go into that one topic. So let me start and get into it. So first of all, did the Democratic side, the actual voters, start overreacting immediately? Yes, right. From minute one, they were like, "That's it. The gulags are coming. They're full-blown Nazis.
Right.
We're gonna, they're gonna have camps for the Chinese. They're gonna camps for this, camps for that, etc." And they're absolutely convinced of it. And if I say that, guys, the gulags are less likely,
When topic
they're like, "Oh, then
mentions.
okay, then you're a collaborator."
Yes, you're right-wing extremist.
Yeah, you're right-wing extremist. I'm like, no, I live in the reality-based world, as you're about to see in this longer explanation of what's happening, right? So the freak out.
So I can't speak to the Democrats, but I can speak to the left. And broadly speaking, one of the ideas of trying to alert people to, again, aggressive policies that are just barreling towards fascism, such as, hey, by the way, Trump has enacted a policy where he's distinctly saying that he's going to be rounding up immigrants and ones that he's classifying as illegal, even though over half of them do not have any criminal records whatsoever, but he's going to be rounding them up, utilizing and weaponizing the ICE, the state power that he has, and then shipping them off to concentration camps in Guantanamo Bay where they can be tortured. That's very, very frightening. that is definitely a time to be sounding the alarm. It's definitely a time to be recognizing that these are fellow human beings just like anybody else. The majority of immigrants to the United States were legal immigrants who overstayed their visas. And honestly, if we don't humanize one another and we don't call out this kind of behavior, then of course this is just going to continue to accelerate. What do you know? He immediately begins also targeting the LGBTQ plus community, going after trans people, trying to not only dehumanize them, but actually erase their very existence by taking them off of their own passports, taking off gender markers, and then removing all language related to both policies related to DEI and policies related to trans people. He enacts these policies as much as he can within every fucking state facility and government facility, and then continues to push for policies that are directly going to endanger both trans kids, that are going to increase the rates of suicidal ideation amongst trans children, as well as making lives for LGBTQ plus people infinitely more and more difficult. This is the time to start making noise about this and to start alerting other people that yes, these are very dangerous policies, and yes, they absolutely do hearken to the same policies and persecutions of, say, the neo-Nazis, or no, not the actual Nazis. Is that to say that things are one-to-one identical and that everything that you were saying? No, these are different periods of time. The different things are happening. There are a lot of different, like, you don't want there to ever be a Holocaust. You don't want there to ever be a full-blown fascistic superpower that has the same arms that the US does, that has a nuclear arsenal. You don't want that. You want to prevent that. So if you're just going to continue to be on the other end of this and be like, oh, all you ever do is Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. That's all you ever say. That's not true, though. The left doesn't say that, but they do try to recognize patterns. And like, this is the benefit of studying history or explaining it to other people so that we don't do this shit anymore, so that we recognize fascism, or we recognize authoritarianism, or we recognize neo-Nazism, because again, these are horrifying, destructive groups that should be destroyed.
Begins, no question. And I was surprised at the severity of it. And the reason that I didn't see it fully coming is because I stopped watching mainstream media a long time ago.
Right.
And what I didn't realize was that the MSNBCs of the world had become radicalized.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just online shows with some, radical hosts, etc. It was like Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow, etc., right into the main vein of Democratic voters going, no, they're going to round all of you up, which is actually
that never
similar
happened
to what Trump and those guys do when they say, oh, when they're going for Trump, they go after Trump because he stole the documents and put them in a Mar-a-Lago bathroom. They're not going after Trump. They're going after you. So you should be really afraid, and you should really hate the other side, right? And it riles up the hatred and the
MSN being radical is hilarious. No shit. Like what? Libs? And also, like, what does this benefit anybody? Like, shit is like fucking hitting the fan right now. Trump, across the board is firing hundreds of thousands of federal workers, is completely consolidating power, is doing everything within his capacity to, again, prevent the use of all U.S. aid internationally, which is going to result in thousands of people starving. Like, he is, again, rounding up people to ship them off to Guantanamo Bay or prison camps in El Salvador. This was within the first 22 fucking days. What benefit does it serve to sit there and be like, so MSNBC is kind of extreme, right? I'm not saying that like I'm pro-Trump. I did vote for him because obviously I saw the left is more extreme. But yeah, maybe it's a good thing that they fired Joy Reid, right? I mean, oof, she was pumping some pretty intense dialogue.
Fear, right?
It's worse than ever, I think.
So I was expecting fear at around, 70, 80 on a scale of 0 to 100, and the fear out of the gate was 200.
Yeah.
Out of 100, right?
Yes.
It was unbelievable.
Where's the left's Gitmo, right? Right? Where's our concentration camps? Where's these gulags? Where the fuck? Even countries where, sock dems are in power, or like liberals, or even center-left liberals, not center-right ones, are in power right now. There isn't people being rounded up and then shipped off to torture camps in other countries. Seattle does have its torture centers. I forgot about that.
So now, having said that, it is not just out of thin blue air, right? So the right wing will be like, they have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, it's nonsense, it's fabricated. No, wait. There are no gulags right now, so that part is not, yes, right? And here, I'll give you another example where it's overhyped. So Trump says, I'm going to take some of the undocumented immigrants and I'm going to put them in Guantanamo Bay. Okay, so that's a terrible idea.
I know.
It's a lawless area. That's not the American way, etc. But Joe Biden already had a plan to put undocumented immigrants
Right.
in Guantanamo Bay.
And the cages were originally Obama's, and Clinton deported 12 million, and Obama deported 3 million.
No
and
one
Trump's
has
That doesn't make any of it good. What is wrong with you? I had to perfectly center myself and enlighten y'all. I need to know that apparently, you know, it had been discussed previously amongst the Democrats to do the very same thing. So I'm just gonna say this is this hype is a little yeah. So the guy who's now in charge and in power is enforcing that and enacting those policies. It's still bad. Like, this doesn't make them good.
deported 1 million.
Yeah, no one is deported more than Barack Obama. And that cuts in both directions. For the right wing who thought, oh, the Democrats don't do anything. Wait a minute, Obama deported more than Trump, like way more, right? And for the Democrats who think deporting people is Nazi, you know, a Nazi thing to do, well, then is Obama 10 times the Nazi Trump is? And Biden did a contract with a private contractor to build that, to reuse that base in Gitmo for undocumented immigrants. So if Trump is a Nazi who's starting that Gitmo gulag, then you have to confess that Joe Biden was the original Nazi who started that gulag, because it's not even Trump's contract, it's Biden's contract to do that facility, use that facility for that purpose. So, okay, so those are the two sides. But so are there real things to be concerned about? As it turns out, and this is not surprising to me, and this is why I voted against Trump. Okay, yes. So when Trump says MSNBC should be shut down because they're lying, what is that? That's not freedom of speech. That's cancel culture. So that's saying, hey, I'm a politician, and I'm going to take away your constitutional rights to criticize me. And then the right wing will say, well, no, well, they shouldn't be allowed to lie. Brother, do you know how often Fox News has lied? Do you know
I totally agree. Okay, then I see what you're saying, right? And then I'm going to see you, as though we're playing cards here. I'll see you the taking away of the First Amendment for medical misinformation, which all turned out to be true. It did come from a lab. The mask thing wasn't needed. Ivermectin was relatively effective as a therapeutic.
What? No! For the love of fuck, Cenk, you have to push back on all three of those statements, okay? The coronavirus was a novel virus. We didn't completely understand it at the time. There was misinformation, as there was a misunderstanding in terms of rollout of, hey, by the way, here's the things that we currently know. Here's the things that we don't know. And yes, you could say that there was a failure of communication between both the government and on that level. That's about as far as we get for that kind of stuff. Wearing a mask, yes. When we speak, we spit. When we talk out loud, there is a spray that goes forward. It's not simply because it's going to make you completely immune to anything that you're breathing in. It's because you're going to spread a virus that can be spread through saliva and spread through moisture a lot less rapidly. We all had to kind of band together because, hey, while we don't completely understand how this works, we don't know what this novel virus is doing to our bodies, we do know that it spreads through these mechanisms. So if we want to do a lo-fi thing to try and slow the spread, here's a handful of things we can do. Soap, for example, destroys it. So we can wash our hands with soap, and if we do that effectively, then hey, if you've touched something that had coronavirus on it, which can stay for up to 24 hours, this is our understanding at the time on certain objects, then you can wash your hands, and then you don't bring it into your house, then you have a higher chance of not spreading it to yourself or your family. You might not spread it to another person if you are a social distance from them because you are not breathing on each other when you are communicating, so that will help you spread it less, as well wearing the mask. All those, yes, those were proven to be 100% effective. The lab leak theory, I'm sorry, has not been conclusively proven at this point. You cannot just say that out loud as it's a matter of fact. I'm just going to say this out loud like it's a real thing. This was developed in a lab by the Chinese, who then released it, reasons, and then it just got around the world. And we know that now, all right? So no, this is all medical misinformation, demonstrably bad medical misinformation.
For the first strain of COVID. That to me was scarier than what you're talking about shutting down MSNBC, which is why I voted for him, not her.
So yes
but
and
keep
no.
going on that.
Yeah,
okay,
no. That's a great question. So yes and no. Here's
COVID broke so many people's brains, not just Americans, but globally. Like in Canada, it's where you get a whole bunch of this fuck Trudeau anti-vax bullshit weirdos who just coming out of the woodworks every single day. They lied to us. They tried to keep us in our homes when we should be allowed to spit on our brothers and sister. Like, what the fuck? We had it so easy compared to a lot of parts of the world, okay? Did you know that like Gaza was being bombed by Israel during that period of time? Can you imagine going through the whole COVID thing, but also being fucking starved and bombed at the same time? And we're fucking complaining about having to stay at home all day and watch Netflix? Are you fucking serious right now? Or put on a mask when you leave the house? Oh my God. I have to wash my hands. Wash my hands. Like, what the fuck? It's like these very, very low requirements, and if we do this, we won't overload our medical systems. You know how hard they have it right now? I know we're banging pots and pans at 7 p.m. every day to make them feel loved for a short period of time. We stopped doing that. It was heavy to lift up the pots and the pans. Do you know what it's like inside the hospitals? Because you don't see it. You're not allowed to go in there. It's a war zone. It's a war zone where they are terrified. They are being overworked. They have no idea what is going to happen to them. They are scared. They are reusing medical equipment because they're running out, and they are really worried about dying because they're watching people die all around them. They're running out of respirators, they're running out of beds, and every single day when they go into there, they have to deal with this as there are fucking wackos and crazies who are coming to the hospital being like, the whole thing is a myth. Open up the schools. I open up the fucking restaurants. I want my burger. I'm going to smash the ambulance. So they have that to deal with as well, in addition to everything else. And my God, yeah, let's actually just all band together and help each other out. It's not a lot. It's not being asked, a lot of us, you know. Trust me, I found it really sad. I wanted to go outside more. I wanted to see my friends. I wanted to eat out. I wanted to do all those things. But it's okay, because we're going to do this together. Remember that? Wash your hands, wear a mask. Like, I don't want to wear a mask. It's itchy, and I can't breathe as well. And you can find one that fits your mouth better. There's a lot of different kinds of masks. I don't want you. I want a warm fries, a burger. I want to go to a club. Like,
That's what I mean. Okay. Yes, I agree with you. They should not have shut that information down. So I'm in a unique position where I'm criticizing the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So,
whoa, did he come up with that? That's crazy. Well, so you're kind of just in the center then, where you can see both sides and you can criticize both sides. That's cool. That's neat. That sounds enlightened almost.
That's just why I love you.
Well, thank you. And you know, and some people are going, oh, well, that's honest and that's good. And others hate it. They're like, no, you have to tell me one side is always right and the other side is always wrong and evil, right? Wow. So in this case, no, the Wuhan lab, I was like, wait, an outbreak happened right next to one of the top virology labs in the world. That is enormously unlikely, right? That it was natural. But then all the scientists seem to be putting out a paper saying, no, it really came from the lab. So in the very beginning, I was like, I guess if
that's also not true, though. No, the scientific community, which again, power to you. You know, y'all did great work during that entire pandemic thing that went down. Yeah, they realized that it was actually organic in origin and that it was not a synthetic virus. That they were able to determine that, which is pretty cool, pretty neat. And collectively working together around the world to share information, also pretty cool. Pretty neat in order to, again, slow the spread of something that could potentially devastate and overwhelm medical systems around the entire planet. I mean, that's incredible. Y'all are neat. But yeah, there's always going to be people and wackos who are going to continue to want us to be like, well, you know what's important to me? What's that? I want to know, was the Spanish flu Spanish? And if so, fuck the Spanish. This is the Spanish's fault. They're the ones doing this to us. Olé? No way. I say, this is fucked up. And it's like, so a lot of people are really, really concerned, I think, more than anything, in where the virus came from, and was it the fault, and who was at the fault, and was it the Chinese? Did the Chinese bioengineer this and then release it into the world? Even though they did suffer immensely, like everyone else did, they had to do complete and total lockdowns. Did you see them spraying their own cities? Did you see them locking down entire apartment buildings? You think you had it bad? Can you imagine getting Windexed in your face every day? Because it was novel. We didn't totally know how to do it. We were like, we don't fully understand this disease yet. We're learning as we go along. But as we learn, rather than share information, we have all these other people who are like, nah, I did my research, bro. I figured this stuff out.
All the scientists say that it came from the lab. Then you found out later it wasn't all the scientists. It was a couple of scientists and the Lancet Journal or whichever very
You're
serious
talking about the
journal.
wet market.
It,
That was,
yes,
that was
but-
Nature, and that
yeah.
was Fauci.
Yeah, and they should not have run that, and they certainly should not have done the propaganda that it was all scientists agreed, because all scientists did not agree. And then we found out, yeah, of course it was from the, I mean, look, we don't know for 100% yet, but it is very, very, very likely that it was from the virology lab that the virus broke out. So, like, I hate it when they insult our intelligence, like Joe Biden's young and dynamic. Guys, we got eyes and ears. Like, he is not within a million miles of young and dynamic, and you sound ridiculous. But what was amazing, Jillian, and that goes to and remember, whenever I say something, it also applies to the other side. Okay?
I want all of it. This is why I need your voice.
So finding a less effective mask is okay. So the mask is simply a symbol and not a prevention method. Allow me to show you, friend, because I know you're coming in here in good faith and you want to learn and you want to see what exactly is the point. The idea was a myth that if you wore the mask, this would protect your face from all diseases coming into you. Right? As in, like, if I wear it, I have security, and will prevent me from getting sick. When really what we should have been teaching people is why they can slow the spread. This is a person talking without a mask, and you can now see the particles, what it looks like, and the moisture. You might not think that because you don't see them with your eyes visually. You need to use maybe more advanced technology to be able to see what you're doing. But like right now when I'm talking, I'm literally spraying moisture of my own into the air. Right now, we all are. If you were talking out loud, if you were laughing, if you were talking, you were spreading it all over. If you have a disease and that disease can be spread through moisture, then you are going to be spraying that all over everything around you, especially if you're in a smaller contained area. All of us are basically spraying each other. It's kind of what we do. That's someone singing. Look how much more is sprayed. This is someone coughing. Ooh, coughing. Really fast way to spread disease, right? Again, if it is multiplying multiple times within your body and your respiratory system, and then all of a sudden you're like, and you don't cover your mouth, which is why we do this, by the way. That's the whole point of covering your mouth, to prevent this. If you just went, then spraying everywhere. Look at that. This is just a casual conversation. Depending on the wind, the humidity, do you have air conditioning in the building? Do you have air circulation in the building? Well, you in the office place, just sitting down at a table with people, all of a sudden you're having a conversation, you're spraying each other. Now, the neat thing is, if you wear a mask, even a cloth mask, well, it will not prevent all of that spray, all of it. Again, cloth masks are not like wearing a 100% like tube in which you are completely hermetically sealed or anything like that, but it will slow dramatically the amount of it, thereby reducing the amount of us spreading a virus to one another. That's the whole idea. That was the idea from the start. That's why it was demonstratable in regions of the world where they had very high rates of masking up and social distancing, that there was less rates of people spreading the disease to one another. Again, it's not controversial. It's not trying to get you to believe in things you don't want to believe in. It's not trying to change your worldview and make you believe something. This is just how life works. And we did some really analog lo-fi things to try and get people to like not spread this as much. If in this example here, consider this blue stuff, if it had in your moisture COVID, and that COVID landed, say, on your hands, right? Or you touched something that the COVID landed on. So someone talked, they sprayed a computer screen, you touched the computer screen, and then you went home. The idea of washing your hands first and foremost with soap specifically was because soap was capable of breaking down the outer rings of the COVID virus, and then you would be able to destroy it on your hands, wash it effectively, and then you would be able to not, when you touch your mouth or put food in your mouth or touch anything else or touch your eyes, anything where it could then get into your system, you would not get infected. To slow it, to keep slowing the spread down. The less people that get infected, the less people that can develop symptoms, the less people that can get sick, the less people that get sick and can go to the hospital, the less burden it is on the healthcare system. And yeah, maybe you can blame Fauci and everyone else for not communicating that properly or not getting enough people to see it, because some people believe that a mask was ceremonial. Some people believe that a mask was to prevent you yourself from getting sick, which if you have a safe and secured N95, it can prevent the amount of bacteria or other particles that you will inhale. That's true. But if you're just wearing a cloth mask, it was so you don't spread it when you talk, because we all spread it when we speak.
It's now because I'm
on the right, that's also true. So when
He's
Trump
still
does
doing
everything that the right wing fought against, right? So they hate cancel culture, and Trump starts saying, if the news outlet is saying some things I don't like, or
the right loves cancel culture. They get off on fucking cancel culture. Everything is cancel culture.
calling a lie, I should be able to sue them, get money in my pocket for. And I'm like, guys, this is a politician saying the press shouldn't be allowed to criticize them.
What if
If
it's not
Trump
true,
wins
though,
enough,
Cenk?
okay,
Cenk.
okay. So listen, number one, I need to get this through to everybody's heads. I hate that the media lies. My whole career is structured around telling the truth to the.
He's got so many cool original ideas, right? Like that he calls out both sides, and that he also doesn't like the media lies. These are neat.
Best of my ability and pointing out the lies of all the different sides. And by the way, we haven't even talked about the biggest liars, which is the corporatists that run mainstream media.
I can't wait to get
They have the biggest, most central lies that creates this entire theater that we're seeing. Okay, so my job is to defeat those lies.
Right.
But if you say a politician gets to decide what is a lie and what is not a lie, and gets to say I'm either shutting that place down because they lied about me, or I demand a financial penalty or a financial reward for me because
He's
they
not like
lied
the other
about me.
girls.
What will the politicians do? The very first thing they'll do is they're all lying. That's it. You're not allowed to criticize me. Any criticism is a lie, and now you're shut down. And the minute they shut one outlet down, everybody's going to then panic and go, okay, the politicians are the best. Yay, politicians. And remember, it's not just for Republicans. Once you set the precedent, then Democrats get to come out and go, anyone who says Joe Biden is old is lying. And you say, oh, come on, they can't do that. No. What they'll say is, you don't know that he has dementia. You don't have a medical record saying he has dementia. Anyone who hints that he has dementia or is in cognitive decline, that's it. You're shut down, maybe arrested, and you owe Joe Biden money for saying that he's in mental decline because you're lying.
Question. If it's defamatory. So I was actually just having a similar conversation with Bill Maher the other night at dinner, asking, what do you feel about him going after different media outlets? And he said with one, I believe it was George Stephanopoulos, correct me if I'm wrong, had called him a rapist. And he said that wasn't what he was accused of. They're very different things. And that's defamatory. I agree with that one. I was like, okay. And then Bill said, through CBS, he's like, everybody, it's editing. They all manipulate interviews. This terrifies me because I'm in the media. This is crazy. Is there a continuum, though? Because as public figures, I've experienced the craziest lies. They do it really well, though. There was an article where in the New York Post where it said that somebody I dated when I was 20 said I spit on people. Now, I could sue the person who supposedly I dated when I was 20 years old because they were reporting the story. But if they said I spit on someone, I could sue them because that's not true. That I want to reserve the right towards, because as a public figure, there are so many lies, and it actually is very effective. That said, when you're, where is that line, though? I see what you're saying. Is there any scenario where you're for holding these guys accountable?
Yeah. So in fact, this was the left-wing position until the right wing started adopting it because of Trump, which is that, no, free speech is not absolute. And so you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and you also can't defame people. So if you take a random person and you say they're a pedophile when they're not a pedophile, and then the whole country thinks they're a pedophile, yeah, you're going to owe them a lot of money. That's defamation, and that is not legal, okay? So now, the legal standard is correct, in my opinion, that for a public figure like us and politicians, it's a higher standard. You have to prove actual malice. Not only did they lie about them, but they lied on purpose to hurt them. Okay, now why is it a higher standard? Because otherwise, again, the people in power, powerful media figures, powerful politicians, again, remember, always shoe on the other foot. What if it's a Democrat? What if it's a Republican, right?
Yeah.
Those powerful people would be able to say, well, I think that's a lie, and I could prove it around the edges, or maybe it is a lie, and I get to own them. I get to take all of their money. That would give the politicians way too much power, okay? So, and they would abuse it instantly, and Trump is already abusing it. Okay, and then the Democrats would go, well, Trump abused it, I'm going to abuse it 10 times more, right?
Yep.
So, for example, on the CBS...
This is such a waste of fucking time. So she spread 3 lies about, and, it directly involves medical misinformation, so I think that's a really bad thing. And her show's not going to get shut down. She does have the freedom to be able to be wrong about things that's different than intentionally, maliciously, with intent, trying to destroy someone and hurt them through defamation. And so if you're going to be speaking about this in relation to, there are some politicians who do this, or some politicians who don't. There are some politicians who basically, I mean, why are we still, is this an American thing, constantly just being like, I'm the only one who cares about the free speech, and I care about the freest of speeches, and I go, like, look, I'm not even American, and I will say this. I agree with the First Amendment to the Constitution. I think it is very, very important in order to prevent tyranny. I think it's a good idea. I think they had a good idea back in the day when they announced it, and it does make a lot of sense if you happen to have, or you come from a society that has had monarchies, that has had kings, in which you can be punished for commenting or criticizing a king. Then yes, you should not allow Congress to pass any laws that are going to infringe on the freedom of the press. I agree with that idea, and I think it's good, and we all agree with it, cool and normal. Now, going forward, if the debate that's going on here is whether or not one politician is allowed to just completely lie and say whatever they want, well, we can see the ramifications of that. Donald Trump is the end result of that. Donald Trump is nothing but lies. If you talk about a ratio, he is more pants on fire than he is actual factual statements when he goes and goes in front of a microphone or says anything. That man is built upon lies. We can see society-wide what happens when the majority of our information is consumed through social media. The social media companies that we consume our information from, they want to promote incendiary content because it keeps people engaged and online longer. So that, as a result, is, yes, resulting in hyperpolarization, and as well as hyper misinformation is traveling much more rapidly, and people are believing more and more and more absolutely deranged things. This is having a net negative effect upon our society. We're going to have to reckon with, we either go off the cliff, we either just continue to barrel towards a significant portion of the population thinks the earth is like literally flat and that is growing, or we find out what's the healthy balance. How do we correct this? We should have a vested interest in the very concept of this is turning out and having bad outcomes. If we have a large percentage of the population who thinks that a vaccine is going to give you superpowers or mutate you or give you AIDS, when all of that is untrue, if you have a certain percentage of the population that is going to like watch their children die rather than vaccinate them for something like measles, when we almost nearly eradicated measles off the face of the earth, when we can very demonstrably be like, we have a vaccine for measles, it's safe and effective, it requires 2 injections, the risk reward on this is dramatic. The dangers to your children beyond having potential scars or having potential physical ailments from this is death, and they can include having immune system amnesia and compromise your immune system's ability to recognize a lot of other diseases, thereby potentially getting you even sicker or killing you. But the good news is none of that has to happen. We have overcome this as a society, and it's great. Back in the day, people used to have so many kids, and they had to. You had to have 10 kids because you knew 4 to 5 of them were going to die. People didn't live past the age of 35 on average. That used to be the way, but we came up with this incredible invention, vaccinations, and we have improved upon and advanced the science of vaccines so much so that we have done wondrous things that in the past would have been seen as magic. But that is just human ingenuity and invention, and we should be so proud of ourselves for doing this. Let's not go down the road of lying about that in order to, get a couple social media clicks. If anything, that shouldn't be rewarded. If you want to take a really easy way or a really easy shot at this, yeah, I think that you should be putting pressure upon social media companies that make billions of dollars off our interactions, that you have a responsibility to not proliferate things that we demonstrably know to be false. And we demonstrably know vaccines. Like, well, if we start a vaccines, sure, I might believe you on the whole measles vaccine, fine, but what about the mRNA ones? And then if we do that, what's to stop the Democrats next year from saying that no Republican is allowed to run an election? These are maddeningly ridiculous extremities and hyperpolarization of this topic when I think you can still just get on the very simple idea that I'm not even saying you have to fucking permanently ban Groiper vaccine cock small balls, 87. You don't have to ban his account, but you don't have to amplify it either. Because you do that, right? Like you could responsibly, all of these social media companies, not give them megaphones every day, but you might make less people addicted to your sites, and you might make less money, and you might make less algorithmically engaged farming. People have to stare at this 24/7 and stay mad. Sure, that might be a cost, but that's why things like that should be legislated. Because I don't think that they have a right to suddenly, by virtue of free speech, God, amplify bullshit that gets people killed and die on large scales. And that's where I think we'll disagree on this very tricky, but like, this is a tricky topic, and that's why people like Cenk and Jillian can exploit it. Where you're like, I mean, come on, do we want to live in 1984? Have you read that book? Pretty scary stuff, all right? Authoritarianism, can't say anything, can't even think anything. They actually get into your brain. They want to control our speech, want to control the things that we're allowed to say out loud. Not my America. That shit is scary as fuck. I care about freedom. Great, platitudes, easy to say things, sentences. But then you must agree that if we are to have nuance, the beautiful and most important word in the English language for pundits these days, that there's a balance here to be struck, and we are not striking that balance. In fact, we are dramatically in the opposite direction, and it's destroying society. Roysina, thank you so much for the $4.99. The immune amnesia caused by measles can lead to increased mortality in children for up to 3 years as the immune system recovers. Probably an important reason why everyone should get vaccinated.
But that is what the people on the left see. It's Handmaid's Tale. You're going to kill Jews, you're going to kill blacks, you're going to kill trans people.
Yeah.
And that is, it's the more. So for me, I'm trying to litigate these issues because I really do think they're going to destroy the country.
Yeah. So let me come back to that in 1 second because that's so important.
So if you're Cenk and you're the home of progressives, that's an opportunity to be like, well, the thing is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this one's really easy. They don't have any institutional power, and so as a result of that, they're not actually capable of destroying the country in the way that you're saying. If you find them annoying online or in general, if they annoy you, that's different than them being within the factions of the government or having control in, the capitalist system, as in owning the majority of the institutions, the corporations, the manufacturers who produce all our food, all of our energy, all of our medicine, all of that, being part of the tech industry, which is now kind of the backbone of the American economy, is within technology and all this kind of stuff, and control all of our social interactions with one another. Yeah, those are all capitalists. They control all that. That's not the left. In terms of government, the closest you'd probably find is a couple progressives within the Democratic Party, but they're a definite minority. The majority of the Democratic Party are pretty hardcore capitalist neoliberals, and then the Republican Party is at this point kind of just a death cult. But again, hyper-capitalists wanting to concentrate wealth into the hands of the very few. So those are the people with all of the power, all of it. If you find a couple lefties online annoying, and don't get me wrong, we're in the same boat there. We can agree upon that. People sure can be annoying, even on the left. That's really different than the people who control and run the world right now. And so, the Republicans are in power. They control every branch of government. Their power in the judiciary. And most, I would say, capitalist and ultra-wealthy and uber-wealthy people have shown themselves to, again, be right to far right in their political beliefs. They do not want to have wealth redistribution. They don't want to have workers owning the means of production. They want to be hyper-capitalists and concentrate, again, all of the wealth into their own pockets and not provide for society, even though they are fully aware that it can result in the end of civilization. They don't care. They want to just live large and have the most amount of wealth now, and earth be damned kind of thing.
Important. That's what we started with, and I want to come back to it. But
what you're talking about is more important. But that's why I'm litigating this with you.
They're super important. They're both super important. So to finish the Biden-McConnell story, because it's going to relate to all this.
Please.
So Obama sends Biden to negotiate with McConnell, and they make over 90% of the tax cuts for the rich permanent. Okay, so that's the uniparty, and they do it under Obama, so no one even notices and no one even fights back. Okay, my nickname for Obama back then, remember, we're the largest left-wing show online forever and ever, right? And I said my nickname for Obama was the establishment. Okay, and people are like, "Oh, you can't call him that, and that's not right." And a bunch of people are paying subscribers left all the way back then, right? Because we were being honest, and they're like, "No, I just want you to tell me Obama's an angel." I'm like, "But brother, he just got this giant tax cut for the rich passed that even Bush couldn't get passed, and they did it as if they're our friends. They're not our friends. What you know?" So in 8 years, he got Obamacare passed, which is slightly better than what we had before. And then they made it seem like it was historic reform and he brought us all this change. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He was the establishment. So, and again, for Democrats, that's heresy. That's the benighted, angelic Obama. You can't criticize Obama. You're in a bubble. You're not getting it. They're rooking us. There's both sides are robbing us blind.
Yeah.
So now we come back to Trump. So I'm at this point where I have a tiny bit of hope in the right wing. And again, the left hates that. But let me explain it. Okay.
But that's the most upsetting part. Why do they want to see a side? Why wouldn't we work together? Can I ask you a question speaking specifically? I'm under the impression that Clinton, or who was he, Lindsey Graham, that he worked with somebody on the Republicans to wait.
By the way, no one is actually buying the sales pitch that Cenk keeps on doing. Essentially, you know, he's achieved the dream. He's hated by everybody. But yeah, no, if you are a leftist, essentially you want to unite the working class. That doesn't matter what you fall upon in terms of, ethnic lines, racial lines, gendered lines, sexual lines. That doesn't matter. You want to unite the working class against, again, the people who are exploiting our labor and concentrating their wealth and destroying the planet. That is something that, yes, would require people who happen to be on the right. You know, the political spectrum really matters a lot less at that point. If you're talking about people, cultists and hyper-capitalist cultists like Donald Trump and his followers and MAGA, people who are barreling towards fascism, yeah, there's nothing to work with there. I'm sorry, you can't turn to a black person and be like, hey, by the way, you need to unite with the Republicans, even though they are saying that, like, you shouldn't be ever allowed to fly a plane because you're just inadequate, or tell a trans person, hey, by the way, you really need to unite with the Republicans, even though they're saying that you don't have a right to exist, that whole thing. But, like, you should try and find where you agree in the juicy center and have a beer together. That's going to be great. Well, again, that comes from a place of privilege for people to be able to be like, yeah, you should really work with the other side. No, I can say fuck Nazis. I hope all the Nazis are destroyed. I don't think humanity will rest until that is achieved. I think not enough of them were destroyed, and they should all be ultimately destroyed. I think that's a safe goal. In the meantime, are there working class conservatives who don't actually have legitimate hate in their heart, or who are being brainwashed by all of these fucking ghouls online? Absolutely, there are. Are there working class conservatives who actually care a lot less about every single day, going after trans kids and care a lot more about where their paychecks are going? I would posit there's a lot more than you fucking think. Are there going to be a lot of working class fucking conservatives who at the end of the day, they don't really fucking have a lot of vested interest in this consistent fucking culture war, blah, 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 that the right are using to try and spread all of their bullshit and false consciousness? Yes. And absolutely, if one of them is like, hey, by the way, we should unionize, brother, I'm not going to be like, but wait, sorry, are you the right, the pure? Are you the pure? I only want to unite with the pure, as I have been told. Then no, I don't give two fucks. Let's fucking let's unionize the workplace. Let's work on getting better workers' rights. That across the board is going to help out everybody at the company. It doesn't matter what industry it is. It's going to be a lot better for everybody. And hey, if people have more free time, if people have more economic freedom, they're going to want to have more time to spend with their families, to relax, and to also learn and to educate themselves and to put more money and funding into public schools. It's good to have public schools. It's good to have an educated, working class. It's one of the reasons why most revolutions usually have really, really stringent rules to try to improve literacy rates. You can see numerous revolutions that have taken place throughout history where they've tried to defy the American empire, and they've subsequently tried to be like, we need to improve the literacy rates of the poorest members of our community, because we understand that the more educated people are, the more people who can read, the more people who both read and understand a whole bunch of these concepts, the more more they are going to want to not have masters, the more they are not going to want to have overlords, less bosses. They just won't want life to be structured in such a way where they're constantly getting fucked over. The more uneducated people are, the easier it is to convince them that their problems are immigrants, trans people, minorities, women. Just keep pushing that shit on them because, yeah, I don't really have the ability to discern between one weird rumor on the internet or what this fucking weird link that I'm being sent is, or was the virus actually part of a conspiracy to keep us all down?
Sorry. To fix the deficit. Can't remember which guy on the right, but I remember falling asleep listening to a podcast about it because it had to do with, look, in the 90s Democrats wanted to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse, and they worked across the aisle. So didn't we used to work together? Well, I guess uniparty, as you're mentioning, but why does the left inherently want to see this not work?
Yeah, because what they're really worried about and what they've been convinced by MSNBC and online hosts is that they're going to be put into gulags. So if you help them 1%, you're getting us on a road to gulags. That's what they've been trained to believe. And now they've internalized it and actually believe it.
But where are the gulags? We did
So,
4 years.
yeah,
No
so-
gulag. No,
yeah.
no new wars.
So let me get to that too.
Okay.
So one last thing on economic issues, and then I'll come back to the so-called gulags.
Sorry, I've been wanting to talk to you
No,
for a
no,
long
no,
time.
absolutely. This is a great conversation. So
Is it? I find it fairly frustrating. Just a consistent circle jerk of, well, the right do have problems, and I'll be the first to admit it. That's why people find me so controversial. I tell it like it is. Don't know if you've heard that before. But the real danger is the left. The left. I mean, have you heard of censorship, cancel culture? Yeah, they engage in it. That's scarier.
now, when I say I have a tiny bit of hope in the right-wing voters, then people misinterpret that. Oh, then you love Trump and you love Elon. And no, I never
You're a
said.
sellout.
I never said that I like their
I wanted to get
politics.
to
I never said
the
that I like their
part
donors.
that was
I'm the most
learned.
anti-donor guy in the whole country, right? I started Wolfpack to get the donor money out of politics, right? So go to wolf-pack.com.
Okay, it's
Okay.
all the way up
So
here.
I knew Trump was going to populism. If he said we are actually cutting defense, okay, now
Populism.
we're doing populism, right? So instead, it looks like there's going to be about $800 billion dollars in cuts for Medicaid, which is not at all populism. You could agree or disagree on cutting Medicaid, how much to cut Medicaid, but that is not popular. That's taken from the average guy, and why in service of tax cuts to the very top.
'Kay.
So right now you mentioned, wait, but they're cutting in other places.
Yeah,
Right.
like they're so we've all seen the podcast or the news show where you get the list of crazy shit that we gave it to an opera in Amsterdam about a trans mouse that married a pansexual camel. I mean, we've
Yes.
all seen that.
So, Jillian, it's a misdirection. It's squirrels.
Okay.
It's a bag of squirrels. So this,
There you go.
yes. So here's why. There's two-
You know what's scary about this is I feel like she's someone who probably wouldn't have gone down this center-right rabbit hole. I'm a Trump supporter, but I still care about some lefty issues person. If she had just had a series of nonstop guests who explained things to her. But like, we can't be expected to have to hold the hands of famous people with really popular shows. It's just not realistic. Like, what are the same thing applies to Joe Rogan, like exact same thing, where it's like Joe Rogan probably wouldn't be as horrifyingly shitty as he is if he had just had a nonstop series of guests who were able to be like, oh, sorry, Joe, that's factually incorrect. Here's why. But again, like that can't be the standard. We can't sit there. Like, that's why there has to be some kind of oversight.
things that they're doing wrong there. So if you're, and let's take it from just a strictly right-wing populist point of view, not left-wing, okay, or not even middle, right?
Okay.
So you don't want any of it, right? So what would you do? The first thing you would do is, what are the bad things? And what are the good things?
Okay.
Is it possible that any one department is nothing but bad things?
No.
Pansexual, mice,
No.
funny? Of course not, right? So when you look at USAID, if you went line by line, you'd see, well, okay, George W. Bush, a Republican, and I gave him credit for this all the way back then because we're the longest running show in internet history. So I was around during the Bush years, and I was like, oh, he's giving $15 billion to battle AIDS in Africa. Not only is that a wonderful thing to do to save millions of lives in Africa, but it also stops the spread. So it saves tons of lives all across the world, including here.
Okay.
Trump is cutting that. I wouldn't do that because then that spreads AIDS more. And that is not a good thing. But it's okay. You can say, I hear you, Cenk, but we gave a lot. And you know what? I don't want to give anymore. There's all these great programs, in my opinion, as someone on the left, and I would argue a lot of the middle, like we're helping to educate women in Afghanistan. We've got a campaign to fight malaria in another part of the world. And I get it. The right wing can say, I don't care. I'm done spending money there. Okay. Okay.
Well, there's the
But
continuum, right, of the stuff that's actually doing good and the stuff that's correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you've seen the Mike Benz slew of interviews where he talks about how essentially it is a siphoning of money to facilitate regime change.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to get to.
Okay.
So, but they also have some things that are absurd. So whether it's, helping theater in Peru, whichever gender it is, I don't know. I don't care. Right.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, and you say, let's put that in the cut bucket, I'm going to agree with you. Okay. Not because I'm against transgender people.
So I just have to learn about this. Give me a second. Fact check. Did President Trump mistake transgenic rodents for transgender mice? What we know. Did President Trump confuse research on transgenic mice with research on making mice transgender when addressing contests on some social media users have suggested? On May Day, March 5th, 2025, the White House issued a press release restating that Trump discussed the $8 million spent by the Biden administration for making mice transgender. Transgender and transgenic are two different terms with different meanings. Here's what we know so far. It's transgenic, you fucking idiot. The entry on X cited a fragment of Donald Trump's address before Congress. Just listen to some of the appalling ways that we've identified. When Lead Story reached out to the White House via email on the phone on March 5th, a spokesperson did not initially offer a clarification on whether the president meant transgenic or transgender, or whether the figure of the $8 million came from. Later on the same day, the White House issued a more detailed press release about it and restated that Trump referred to $8 million spent by the Biden administration for making mice transgender. While similarly sounding terms, the two terms, transgender and transgenic, are not the same. The website, the National Human Genome Research Institute, reads, transgenic refers to an organism or cell whose genome has been altered by the introduction of one or more foreign DNA sequences from another species of artificial means. Transgenic organisms are generated in the laboratory for research purposes. Persons who are trans have a gender identity that differs from the sex that they were assigned with at birth. These are two completely different things. It turns out that Trump has mixed up the two. And this is the origin of the entire trans mice thing that you are now hearing every right-winger repeat like it's gospel. Which, don't get me wrong, trans mice sounds super cute. And like I've seen, this is art on the internet that people have been posting. And, I'm not here to take away the memes, but it is important to realize that that's fucked up that he keeps doing that and that people regurgitate it. And that someone, like Jillian here is now sitting across from Cenk being like, I agree deeply about the US aid. I think that there's probably some good things that we spend the money on, but we waste a lot of it on weird shit. Trans mice, for example, or the Brazilian drag shows. And then it's like, even if those were true, which they're not, but even if that was true, even if it was 100% true that you spent $46,000 on a Brazilian drag show and you spent $11 million on trans mice, that pales in comparison to the amount of money that you waste on your military. The money that's completely unaccounted for. If it's just, I care about government waste, then you have to start there. Otherwise, it's, I care about trans mice. I think that's the truth here, is that you care deeply about, you're disgusted at the very concept that money was spent on trans mice. And then it's like, okay, so you fundamentally just hate the concept that there was a program to again, give gender dysphoric operations to mice. And that's why you're really mad. It's not so much about the dollar amount or the waste, because if it was, again, you would care deeply about the fact that there are trillions of dollars wasted by the Pentagon. That probably should be a lot more concerning. Royce, thank you for the other dono. Transgenic mice, not trans mice. Yes, I was just going over that right now, actually. Good timing. But thank you once again for donating.
But because I don't know why I'm helping transgender theater in Peru. I mean, Okay, like I made that one
You
up.
want the 80-year-old grandma to get her health care.
Right, I made that
Right.
one up, but you get it, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Right, it's just like the same thing with the ad that Trump ran, where the undocumented immigrant transgender people that crossed over are in detention, and they want free surgery for gender reassignment surgery. And trying to tell my friends on the left, whether I say it or the American people say it, which they do, 98% of them basically say it, we're not saying we hate trans people. What we're saying is, I don't know why I'm paying for their surgery, okay, when they're not.
That was happening under Trump 1, his first term. That was a policy that existed. It's complete manipulation to sit there and say that this was something exclusive to Joe Biden, that Joe Biden had enacted a policy in which it was going to be gender-affirming care for prisoners. What you have agreed to as Americans to do is to provide a certain amount of health care to prisoners. And so as a result of that, certain forms of health care can include gender-affirming care. Again, this was under Trump 1, and then it continued under Biden, and then it became a politicized issue that was directly being targeted as if this was something uniquely democratic. And then again, how much money do you think is being spent on this, Cenk? Because for you to sit there and be like, I got to tell my friends on the left, look, I am not a transphobe. I just don't want my money going towards gender-affirming care for prisoners, okay? That has nothing to do with that. Then why are you buying into this rhetoric that clearly is being propagated by the right in order to get people really mad, once again, using trans people as the crux for the whole fucking thing?
Not even citizens, and they were detained for crossing the border illegally. Now I owe them money for their surgery, for whatever surgery, right?
Right.
And Americans are saying, I don't.
You don't owe them anything. What are you talking about?
I don't owe them that money. Sorry, right? And so that's fair.
Then you might as well just say out loud that you don't even believe in, I don't know, adequate care for detainees, that you want to violate the Geneva Convention, that you don't feel that it should be a certain set standard of healthcare provided at all. That should be where you're, like, if you want to honestly position yourself, then say it.
Fair. In my opinion, that's super fair.
But then you got Kamala saying that on friggin' camera. And then, again, this is where I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and so that's the far left. That's the far left.
But Cenk, they plant a friggin' flag, man.
Trump was not the far left. What the fuck are you talking about? These policies existed under him.
And they don't course correct. I've got my list of crazy shit they have planted a flag on. It's like
God.
The 80% issues. It's like sex changes for kids, sex changes for illegals and criminals.
Not true, not true. All lies. There are no gender-affirming surgeries for children that involve bottom surgery. That's a lie. That's made up. This is 100% Republican fear-mongering. See, Cenk, this is why you don't do this shit. You can't sit there and be like, I'm not a transphobe. But I got to admit, yeah, the left have lost their mind on this. I mean, no one supports sex change operations for kids. You're right, including advocates for fucking gender-affirming care. They do not say that children should be receiving bottom surgery. That's something the right has made up. Children, if we're defining kids as prepubescent, get gender-affirming care in the form of names, in the form of allowing them to present how they want, wear their hair long, dress differently. You call them by their preferred pronouns and names. Once they start undergoing puberty, then things change. But up until that point, if we're talking about children who are prepubescent, that's what gender-affirming care is. It's not surgery. It's not hormone blockers. It's not, HRT. It's none of that shit. It's 100% just recognizing them for who they are.
I mean, it's freaking bananas. Stop.
So
letting criminals out of jail.
So we'll
when has a criminal been released from prison because they were trans? When has that ever happened? I don't even need to look that one up. That is absurd. The world's biggest carceral state, the most incarcerated population in human history, the United States of America, is allowing people to leave prison if they identify as trans.
Get to that too. And so again, I agree with you a lot on that stuff. And again, why I get attacked from the left, etc. So, but when you look at
Because none of it's true, Cenk. Jesus Christ. Yeah, you're going to get attacked. You're going to get attacked from anyone who actually wants to do a second of research. If you go online, you can look this shit up. I got attacked on the left for agreeing with you on all the batshit absurdery that you just said out loud.
USAID, you go, okay, I'm eliminating the theater in Peru, okay?
Okay.
And I'm eliminating some programs that you're like, wait, that looks like a CIA slush fund,
Right.
right? And there are things in there that are probably
For
a CIA slush
sure.
fund. But if you eliminate everything, but wait a minute, you didn't just eliminate the CIA slush fund and the theater in Peru. Not only did you also eliminate AIDS treatment, malaria treatment, et cetera, but you also eliminated, as it turns out, the programs that were going to the churches that were doing an amazing job of helping the poor and the needy across the world. And by the way, you could even say then, look, I've now looked at it. I see what I'm cutting. And I'm still okay with cutting it.
You know, I'm going to help
No
the poor
problem.
and the needy here. I could, you know, we've got veterans in the street. I mean,
Yeah.
we put our own oxygen mask on first. I understand that position. There might be some stuff yeah, it's a continuum. It's like,
That's so wild because I played a clip of her doing an interview where she watched the documentary, and after watching that documentary on how people are starving in other parts of the world, she's like, yeah, I can't believe that people are actually, like, you know, letting children starve. Like, you would do anything to prevent that. It's like, yep. So, by the way, the programs that the United States provides to prevent the starvation of children, oh, no, fuck them. No, fuck them kids, sincerely. We should be putting on our own oxygen masks before we help anyone else. I mean, there's homeless veterans, all right? So, yeah, I'm sorry. But, you know, kids in South Africa who are dying, they're going to have to just die because, yeah, no, we gotta look after our own. I mean, wonderful that you are looking to, again, advocate for social safety programs and social safety nets within you know, your own country. I hope that I'm going to see her advocating a lot for that, not voting for, say, someone who wants to gut those programs like Donald Trump. You're going to actually promote, say, someone like Bernie Sanders or politicians who are actually actively talking about expanding the social safety net in the United States. Because, you know, I always hear that if it's about cutting programs to go to other countries, we got to do that because we got to look after our own. We got to look after number one, baby. And it's like, okay, so you're going to advocate then for, again, expanding the social safety net so everybody can have these kind of programs, for feeding programs, for school, for hospitals, Medicare for all that. Oh, no, that's communism. No, can't do that. And again, that's even leaving out the fact that a lot of the countries that USAID is provided to are also countries that have been ravaged by the American empire for a variety of reasons. Historically, you can say for the extraction of resources, for destabilizing democracies, for having more, you know, dictators propped up, all that kind of shit. So to just now out of nowhere be like, you're on your own. Yeah, no, you're on your own. Yeah. No, we got to look after our veterans that we will not be looking after.
right?
Yeah. So problem number one is when you cut blindly, you cut the money to the churches as well as to theater, et cetera, right? So
I
you're cutting
understand.
blindly, and that doesn't make sense. You want to cut the fraud, waste, and abuse, but you don't know what that is in the beginning. So if you cut, you're going to cut things that you shouldn't cut, but you're also going to leave behind things you shouldn't leave behind because you
Right.
never even bothered to check what was fraud, waste, and abuse.
It's like if you're removing a tumor from someone's brain, you have to be exceptionally precise and careful.
Exactly.
Got
Okay.
it.
And especially when it's the government and it affects real people's lives. Okay.
Understand.
But even when you say, all right, Cenk, I don't want to do nuance. I get it. I cut up a part of the brain I shouldn't have cut, but whatever, right? I hated the tumor so much I had to get it out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm still, it's a drop in the bucket. When you take all of those cuts together, it's going to be like 2% of the $4.5 trillion.
Really?
And it's meant to distract you. It's meant to get you to think, oh, it's okay. We did cuts. And so in the budget, you always look at the budget. In the budget, there's a theoretical $2 trillion in cuts. First pause, wait a minute. There's $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, only $2 trillion in cuts. And according to reconciliation, the way that the Senate works, it has to be deficit neutral. Okay.
Right. So if you've got 4.5 on one side, but two
Two
over
on the-
here, you got a
$2.5 trillion.
trillion dollar.
That's going to get added to the debt at a minimum. So that's when Republicans, and they've done it for 50 years, and Democrats have played along for 50 years, go, oh, trickle down economics. So, yeah, supply side. And these magical thinking where if you cut taxes on the rich, we'll all magically get more tax revenue. No, you won't. You'll get less tax revenue. And how do I know that? We've done this a lot of times. And every time they cut taxes on the rich, we do not get more revenue. We get less
Salaries
revenue.
don't go up.
No, in fact, salaries for the average American, there's a big giant asterisk there. Salaries for the average American, adjusted for inflation, haven't gone up in 50 years. Okay. That's why the country's so angry. But the establishment, the people in media and politics don't see that anger. Why? Because the giant asterisk is pay and salaries for the top, for executives, etc., have gone way up.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody in Washington
that's
is like,
good.
what do you mean? We all got super rich. This economy is
Yep.
amazing.
Market's doing great.
Because they're in a bubble and they don't know any normal people. They don't know anyone in the middle of the country.
Right.
And they don't know that now a house, if you're a young person,
It's impossible.
it's impossible to buy a house.
Impossible.
Okay. And there's so many factors that go into it. So when the right wing, go back to credit for the right wing voters, they noticed, wait, I think it might not just be Pelosi and Biden that are corrupt. I think McConnell might also be corrupt. Wait a minute. I think that the establishment Republicans
It's
might
a
be working
better
with the
point, but a
establishment
sandwich
Democrats.
between insanity.
Wait
I
a minute.
know.
This is a uniparty.
I want to drain the swamp.
Exactly. Yes, and drain the swamp. Exactly. Unfortunately, they picked the wrong guy, right?
Okay.
So, but that instinct was correct. And if you're on the left,
Okay.
don't call them Nazis for having the right instinct. So now on the left, they say, yeah, but they don't realize that Trump.
And then we're back to insanity. That's not the reason why people on the left may call people Nazis. If you are targeting vulnerable groups, going after minorities, talking about rounding people up and shipping them off to torture camps and Gitmo, yeah, that is Nazi shit. It's going to be called out as Nazi shit. I'm so sick and tired of the whole fucking, yeah, but ultimately, I mean, when I get down to brass tacks here, we have to agree that they were populist first and foremost. That's why they voted for Trump.
I'm cherry picking.
The guy who was quoting Mein Kampf that you yourself called a fucking fascist like 25 different times on your show.
Everyone should have rallied around Bernie. But what did they do? The exact opposite, because they never wanted unity, built around those elites getting paid. Outraised Donald Trump by a lot.
Yep.
She got a lot of corporate donations.
Conversations, but that's exactly. But you're proving my bias.
So hold on. So now
Take
on the
me
Democrat
pieces here.
Okay,
I
so
need more perspective, Cenk. You're...
So now on the Democratic side, you have the infrastructure.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't have looked.
So Trump, I thought Trump,
I just honestly can't put myself in the headspace of being someone who's just like so riveted to speak to Cenk, as Cenk is just like going all over the fucking map and doing everything in his power to be as enlightenedly centrist as possible. And like, we're always going to bring it back. All right. I'm going to say that I'm one of the only people here who's willing to, you know, call out the Democrats and call out the Republicans. I'm one of the first people kind of thought of this concept. So it's novel, if you will.
then was used on social issues because they had already gotten everybody to comply. So then you were not allowed to disagree. You were not allowed to say Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton or Biden. Now you're not allowed to say, hey, maybe undocumented immigrants who are trans shouldn't get free surgery.
Right.
You're not allowed to say that.
Right.
Okay. And then a curious thing happened where the establishment guys who I have deep problems with started joining forces with the far left. And so then in California.
What are you talking about? Okay, first off, the far left don't have any power within the Democratic Party. Secondly, there are a couple people who are, progressive or more left-leaning politicians, social democrats who are within the Democratic Party, but they're still a minority. And of that group, the fact that you're unable to speak up about the treatment of prisoners within the what the fuck are you talking about? The Democratic Party, first off, is consistently trying to go to the right of the Republicans on these issues, being like, we're tougher on immigration, we're tougher on law and order, we're tougher on crime, we're definitely not trying to be the whole open borders, extreme radical communists that they paint as like all this kind of shit. And well, at the same time, like, yes. No question that there is better treatment of LGBTQ plus issues on the Democrat side than there is on the Republican side. That is very demonstrable, and it is a big difference between the two of them. But to suddenly state that there is a demand of orthodox groupthink amongst Democrats, where like the second that election happened, half the Democrats and the politicians were just like, hey, by the way, I'm dropping the trans thing. I don't care. Like, oh, well, none of them were reprimanded for that. There wasn't suddenly like, you are unable to speak of that, the gender ideology that controls the party now.
California, they did something that was so strange. And so we started calling it out on the Young Turks.
Yep.
And again, people say, oh, no, you guys don't help the right wing, et cetera. We all wanted police reform. Why did we want it? black guy after black guy getting shot, killed,
Sure.
etc. And not just black people. One of the worst we ever showed was a white guy in a hotel room crawling on his hands and knees, and the cops shoot him anyway, totally unarmed. And I'm like, look, you've got to retrain the cops. Remember in the old days, you'd see in the 1970s and 80s, they'd say, freeze, put your hands in the air. You know, they'd go through a process. Now they come in and they're like, boom, shoot them dead in 2 seconds. We've got to fix the training of the cops.
Okay.
So then in California, they did not do that.
And then they defunded the police.
Instead, no, they didn't even bother doing that. They did in small parts. But instead, they changed some felonies into misdemeanors. Right. And I'm like, wait, who asked for that? No one asked for that.
Right.
But that wasn't the problem at all. And they're like, no, let's take these thefts and a whole bunch of other things that used to be serious crimes, and now let's make them misdemeanors. But the problem is when you make them misdemeanors, they plead out. So when they're a felony, they can plead them to a misdemeanor, and at least they'll get some prison time.
So they do no time, and nothing. Right, which is why.
So that's why the theft started exploding.
Yep.
Because before it used to be a felony, and I'm giving loose examples here, but there's super concrete examples on each one of these laws, right?
Yeah.
So then, when those thefts then became misdemeanors, they'd plead out to literally nothing. They would walk. So the cops would arrest the guy who broke in at CVS, and then they'd take him in, and the prosecutors would go, we can't hold him because there's nothing to plead to, so we're going to let him go. And then the cops started getting frustrated, and they're like, what are we arresting them for if you're just going to let them go? And so now the left was like, no, you can't say that. Authoritarian structure.
Oh, I was just about to speak up about that, and I was going to be like, as the leader of the max left, and I need to max left myself a little bit here. That's a very right-wing and Republican and propagandistic talking point. Even referring to the old shows of the 70s. Do you remember when cops used to be the good guys, in the 70s and the 80s? They tried to solve crimes. They would find the semen, and then they would use the semen to be able to, find the bad guy and all that kind of stuff. And now I think they shoot a little too quickly. But the problem is that really, ultimately, people are just getting away with misdemeanors and just getting a slap on the wrists. There's not adequate punishment being given to these criminals, and that's really the real problem comes in. I mean, if he actually wanted to, and he doesn't, because he's brought on people, he's brought on abolitionists before, he's brought on Olaimi as well as others to discuss these kind of topics who've explained it in very simple terms to him, that ultimately, if you want to look at the whole problem, it involves you and your correlation versus causation. When it comes to, hey, why exactly was there really, really high rates of crime in this period of time, say this is peaking around the 90s, and what was the cause of that? It's like, well, there's actually been a lot of explanations for the cause of that at this point. Everything from, high volumes of lead being in a variety of inner city and poor and impoverished communities, houses, in gas, in a lot of different aspects of their lives, and pipes. That we have now, thoroughly begun to roll back the very idea of using vast amounts of lead in our homes, piping, all that kind of stuff. But also, if we're talking about more recently, there has not been an overwhelming surge of violent crime in the form of shoplifting and battery that comes as a result of shoplifting, of huge amounts of out of control crime waves, Venezuelan gang, like all the stuff that they consistently push. It's like, if you want to look towards what exactly helps reduce these things, because I think that's where we both agree, right? You and a Republican both agree that you want less crime. There's your beer. There's your conversation. You want less crime. I want less crime. I want less people to commit crimes. I want less people to break into homes. I want less people to commit acts of violence against each other. And we have to look towards what reduces that. Is it more punitive measures? Is it harsher sentences? Is it more incarceration? Because if that was the case, the United States would have the lowest crime rates of any country in the world. They have the most amount of people, nearly 1% of the entire population is behind bars. If that was the case, if more incarceration and harsher penalties made less crime happen, then the United States would be a primary example of that. It's not. Again, I know he likes to be like, well, the left always starts to talk about the socioeconomic issues of this, because that's what the data bears out. Social housing. Reducing or giving people access to healthcare is going to result in more and more people either going bankrupt or losing their houses as a result of having to pay for that healthcare. So you should have public healthcare. You should have that as well. You should have the ability to afford food, the ability to afford rent. As soon as you have families and you start taking these things away, or as soon as you have people who are trying to make it within the system and they start losing all of these kind of things, then yeah, they're going to be more predisposed to doing things that they need to in order to survive. Now, is every person breaking into cars or every single person breaking into stores doing so to buy their next hot meal? No. A lot of them are doing it for drugs, because drug addiction is something that is disproportionately going to be happening in higher and higher rates the longer you spend living in more impoverished conditions. If you live in impoverished conditions, if you live on the street, then you're going to be more prone to not only being exposed to drug use, but more prone to trying and experimenting with doing drugs, because yeah, it sounds really, really hard and shitty to be living on the street where you're constantly in danger, you're constantly afraid, you don't know where your next meal is coming from. So yes, once you get addicted to opioids, once you get addicted to fentanyl, you are going to want to need to do that all the time. And if you don't have the money to afford to do that, you're going to break into stores to try and find the fentanyl. You're going to break into cars to try and get the money to buy the fentanyl. You're going to break into homes to try and steal things to buy the fentanyl. This is all how this shit goes down. And so if you're just sitting there being like, oh, these violent criminals are breaking things, can we look into why? Can we look into what causes this? Can we look into other societies and how have they reduced this? Because it saves you money. Social housing saves you money. Cooperative housing will save you money. Public health care will save you money. You can spend less on cops, but that's not the way the U.S. works. It's totally the opposite. It's like cops. We need to spend half of our city's budget on police, militarize the police, more police to keep everyone safe. And ultimately, it's to keep those who already have a lot of stuff safer. It's to keep people with a lot of money feeling safer. But ultimately, is it actually reducing the amount of poor people, the amount of homeless people, the amount of people who are addicted to drugs, the amount of people who are stealing to buy the drugs, all of that shit? Yeah, I know. It's almost like it's all connected, and this shit only serves one thing. I know a lot of people are like, I can't watch Cenk anymore. I'm with you.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/theserfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Egbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Puppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincel, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.